We're going to talk about why our legislators kill good bills, the bills that we would support. But before we do that, I just need to clear the air, clear any confusion there might be out there. I am not Dave Grohl. I have no idea what a Foo Fighter is. So I appreciate, Russell, the correct introduction and my real name, John Michener. All right, onward, upward. Friends, we're here today because we are the grassroots conservatives in Oklahoma. We are the 6% that pays attention to what happens up there at the Capitol. We care about what our elected officials do. We're the few that get that they work for us, and we pay attention. That's what brings you here today. And we are motivated by a lot of different things. As you look around Oklahoma, you see a lot of different political Indian tribes, if you will. There's people engaged in this process because they're passionate. The thing that brings us today together is that we want to stop abortion. Other groups like us are very active. There are those that care that we be able to defend ourselves and want to support the Second Amendment. There's others that care about education and their children, that parents be the ones that be able to make the choices about education for their children, not the state. There are those that care more than anything about our liberty. And that brings to mind the 9/12 groups and the Tea Party groups, the constitutionalists that fight and watch these public policy issues along with us. We have those that are concerned about parental rights, and it motivates them to be engaged in the process more than anything. There's people that show up to GOP party precinct meetings and county meetings. They help to write our platform for the Republican Party, and they try to hold our legislators accountable. And we have those involved in service clubs around the state. These people are motivated because they believe that there is a right way and a wrong way to do public policy. That's what they all have in common. Whatever their priority is, whatever their top thing is, there's one thing that they all have in common, and that is at the center of their worldview is God. There's God's way to do things, and there's man's ways to do things. And that's why we're so motivated. In short, when we look at government and the laws that we make, we're not saying that everything that's moral should be legislated, but what we are saying is that everything that is legislated, everything that we make into a law, had better be moral, or it should be no law at all. We should fight against it. We should try and overturn it. So in our worldview, those of us here today, government has a very simple job description that's easy to understand. It is supposed to defend our God-given rights to life, to liberty, and the ownership of property. That's it. That's what government should do. And we understand that. So why is it then that our legislators that we hired who work for us kill the kind of legislation that actually does this, that actually fulfills their job description? Because if you look at the kind of bills that we all support, they often get denied without a hearing. I'm not talking about they talked about it and they voted and they didn't pass. They don't even hear them. They kill them in back rooms. They don't even get discussed. Don't believe me? Let me give you a few examples from the last couple of years in each of these areas. When it comes to liberty, the Senate had a bill a few years ago that would have protected those who declined to do business with homosexuals. There was another bill in the Senate that would have notified parents that they have the right to exempt their school children from vaccinations. These are questions of liberty and freedom of conscience, the kinds of things that we all think should at least be debated. But what happened? They're denied a hearing. There's not even an official discussion. What about when it comes to property? You know what? In the Senate, there was a bill that would have protected personal assets from seizure. Sounds like something that would put you in the hospital. We wanted to protect our assets from being seized by law enforcement without due process of law. Another bill in the House would have allowed the hunting of wild hogs on your own property without a license. What happened to these bills? Denied a hearing. What about the preeminent life? The preeminent right, the right to life. Do they do any better on this one? What about a House bill that would have allowed the carrying of firearms in a vehicle? Shouldn't you be able to defend yourself? Isn't that a God-given right? And how dare Senator Silk run a bill that would have closed legal loopholes and criminalized abortion? Again, completely denied without a hearing. What's going on? Why do they do this? Why are they killing our good bills? Well, I think there's several good reasons, and I'd like to mention some of them to you today. First of all, representation. They keep using this word, but I don't think it means what they think it means. They misunderstand representation. See, they all think we live in a democracy and that their job is to consider what the people in our state think, 50% plus one, write a bill and get it passed. They believe that's what it means to represent the people. That's not their job description. We don't live in a democracy. That's just mob rule. That's the tyranny of the majority. We live in a representative republic, and their job is to represent us in the administration of justice. Their job is to represent our interests, which are our life, our liberty, and our property. That's their job. So why do they kill good bills? They just simply don't understand their jobs. Why else do they kill bills? Well, frankly, they just don't agree with us. This one's going to come as a surprise to some of you because they know what to say. These guys who run for office know what to say to get you to vote for them. But the reality is they don't agree with you. Now let me step back and talk more broadly about our culture for a minute, and even the culture within the church. The fact is that the church culture has been corrupted right along with the secular culture. Did you know that there are mainline Christian denominations in the American church who actually agree and embrace abortion? Did you know this? Let me give you some examples. The Methodist Church, in their Book of Discipline, says we support the legal option of abortion. The Lutheran Church says this church opposes legislation that would outlaw abortion. What about the Presbyterians? They say that, well, only those well-developed enough to survive outside the womb ought not be aborted. Everyone else is fair game. And what about the Episcopal Church? They are resolved that this church express its unequivocal opposition to any action on the part of governments that would limit the access of a woman to safe means of acting on her decision for abortion. So this is what mainline churches are thinking and saying in the United States of America. So where does that leave the rest of the churches? Well, they're silent for one thing. So what happens in a Christian culture where some churches say we're pro-choice and the rest of the churches don't say anything? What it means is that the average Christian in the pew in the United States has made their peace with abortion. And when you ask them what they think, they defend it, just like a secular person. They may still not feel good about it. Maybe they would say it would be wrong for me to do, but they're certainly not going to tell anyone else they can't do it, and they think that's the Christian position. So now getting back to politics, what about our legislators? They come from the same community, the same culture, the same churches that we do. Why would they think any differently? They know they have to tell you, I'm pro-life, and then you'll vote for them. But what does pro-life mean to them? I'll give you an example of my own state senator, Paul Rossino. He's a Catholic, and he had a lot of money when he was elected last year, so I got a lot of mailers. Maybe 8, 10, 12 mailers in the several days leading up to the election. They said, I'm pro-life. I believe in the sanctity of life. I'm a good Christian. All that stuff was on every flyer. 9 out of 10 flyers mentioned something about life. He had pictures of cute babies, little cute baby feet. So you think he is the pro-life champion. But you know what? When he knocked on my door to ask for my vote, I said, what are you going to do to stop abortion? And then he told me, I disagree with the Catholic Church. I think it would be better if handicapped children were aborted. And I think there are already enough regulations against abortion. How many others at our state capitol think exactly the same thing, but we don't know it? So why do they kill good bills? They don't agree with us. They're also afraid. They're afraid of opposition. Nobody likes an ugly, emotional fight, right? You don't want to get up in the morning and find 200 emails in your box calling you 4-letter words and a racist and a bigot and a Nazi. This is what happens to these guys times 100. It's almost part of the job description. Then they get hundreds of voicemails that sound just like the emails. And then they get obnoxious left-wing radicals sitting in their office making snarky comments and threatening to run people against them. It's no wonder they don't want to run controversial legislation. It's just easier to keep your head down and not do anything controversial. They also hide behind the argument that they presume to know the future. I hear this all the time. It'll never work. We shouldn't even bother trying. It's not going to pass. Have you heard this? My good friend, former Representative Chuck Strom, was talking with me about maybe running this bill last year when he was still in the House. And he said, John, I just feel like it might be doing the right thing at the wrong time. You know, I think that's very representative of the way a lot of them feel. They don't want to run legislation that is controversial unless they know that it has the support of leadership and it has a really good chance to pass. But you know, if that's our thinking, why even play the game? I mean, let's just look up the Vegas odds and declare a winner. Have you guys been watching bowl games? Have you been watching the playoffs? How often, how many times have we seen the Sooners or the Cowboys defeat the odds? Albeit sometimes on the wrong side, right? But we've got to play the game. That way we know the good players. We know who to cheer for. And we know what the score is at the end of the day so we can play better next time. We have to play. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. So that's a main reason they kill bills. Why else? Well, they fear reprisals from leadership. It's been alluded to already here today, and I'm going to talk more about that in a few seconds. But the reality is, if leadership says, we don't want you running that bill, what's going to happen if you run it anyway and you go against the kings at the Capitol? They will not allow your other bills to advance. What happens if you're the good legislator who is carrying that bill that says, I'm going to protect your liberty, I'm going to protect your parental rights? You want to homeschool? I got a bill that makes sure you're going to be able to do that. What if you're the legislator who says, you want to be able to defend yourself and carry firearms? I've got the bill to do that. But then leadership comes along and says, oh, you want to abolish abortion? You do that, that other bill's going nowhere. And I've heard this. Representative Guillen, Representative Strom, Jason Murphy, Senator Silk has told me these stories, others. This is a very real fear. And if you've got legislation you want to advance, it's easy for them to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. Someone else needs to do it because I have my little baby piece of legislation that's really important, and I want it to go forward. Why else do they kill bills? They don't really have a voice. They don't have power, and you don't really have representation. Okay? The average citizen out there on the street, if they've even thought this far, believes that their legislator should be able to write a bill, have it heard, and have it voted on. Guaranteed. Is that true? Absolutely not. They can't do that. They can't guarantee that. We don't actually have representation. All the power in the Capitol is concentrated with the kings of the Capitol. And who are they? Who are the kings of the Capitol? You've got two kingdoms. You've got the House of Representatives and you have the Senate. So over in the House, Speaker Charles McCall is the king of the House of Representatives, and he can control everything that happens there. Over in the Senate, you have the Senate pro tempore Greg Treat, newly elected. New on the job, he's the new king. These two guys assign committee chairmen, they assign every member to a committee, and they assign every bill to a committee. So in other words, they exercise complete sovereignty over their fellow legislators and over every piece of legislation at the Capitol. That's power. So there's one more person that I'm going to mention here, and that is the Lieutenant Governor, newly elected Matt Pinnell. Technically, legally, the Lieutenant Governor is the king of the Senate. It's just that recently they've abdicated the throne. Right now the pro tempore acts as the king, but the legal king is the Lieutenant Governor. In the Oklahoma Constitution, you'll see in Article 6 that says the Lieutenant Governor shall be president of the Senate. And the Senate pro tempore shall preside in the absence or in the place of the Lieutenant Governor. You all probably didn't know this, but from the beginning of statehood until the 1960s, the lieutenant governor functioned as the king of the Senate. He made the committee assignments. He assigned all the members to committees and exercised that power. But in the late 1960s, the lieutenant governor began gallivanting around, drumming up tourism for Oklahoma, and campaigning to be the next governor. And that's kind of the way it's gone ever since. Now, the reason I mention this to you is because Matt Pinnell knows this. He's talked about it on the campaign trail, and he said, I will lead in the Senate if the issue is important. Is this issue important? Then let's keep him in the loop as well. Maybe he'll decide to help out. All right, back to more reasons why they kill bills. This is the big one, guys. They fear losing office. They got to get reelected, don't they? So what does that mean? It means that they're always going to do the easiest, least controversial thing. They're going to try and placate the most people and upset the fewest so that they can get reelected. And what this leads to is they don't do anything tough, they don't do anything controversial, and they only sponsor what I like to call pink, puff, and piffle. This phrase was coined by the founder of Oklahoma Conservative PAC, Charlie Meadows. Pink, puff, and piffle. This is legislation that looks really pretty, and it sounds nice, but it does nothing good. And there's a proliferation of that so that they can try and get themselves elected. When it comes to abortion, this dynamic is strong at play. If we go and look back historically, let's just take you back to 2014. In 2014, there was a pro-life bill in the Senate that said we're going to require abortionists to have hospital admitting privileges. This bill didn't save any lives. It was not controversial. It sounded great. Everybody was on board. And the kings of the Capitol said, let's do it. We approve that bill. In 2015, there was a House bill, pro-life bill, that purportedly banned dismemberment abortions. It didn't stop a single abortion, but leadership said, sounds great. Let's do it. In 2016, the first-year Senator Silk tried to criminalize abortion. The House passed a pro-life bill that created a new account to fund pro-life media messages. Of course they said, let's do that. That sounds great. In 2017, the House ran a pro-life bill banning abortions on preborn babies just because they're handicapped. Again, wouldn't save a single life. But boy, it sounds compassionate. So they said, let's do that. So what happens is, the pink, puff, and piffle, the pro-life legislation that gets run every year, becomes the enemy of what is needed and necessary. The very thing that we should be doing, the pro-life bill becomes its enemy. Think about it. You want to get reelected, you're afraid of opposition, you really don't want to do anything controversial, and you've got an option. On the one hand, you can do something non-controversial but looks good, and on the other hand, you could try and criminalize abortion and bring the wrath of everybody in the left on you. Which one are you going to do? They choose pink, puff, and piffle every time, unless we start to do something different. Why else do they kill bills? Because they need to trade victories for votes. There can never be a lasting peace, never a permanent peace. There has to always be another battle, another skirmish, another little something that they can win so that they can claim victory and trade that for your vote. What that leads to is a very cozy arrangement. What is the cozy arrangement? That is when the pro-life lobbyists say, you know what? We need you to run this regulation and education bill, and it's going to look really good for you. And the establishment, the GOP party, the leadership at the Capitol says, yeah, let's glam onto that and do that. And so they do the pink, puff, and piffle, and it passes. And so what happens? It comes re-election time, and the pro-life lobby groups say, he's got an A-plus rating, he's 100% pro-life, it plays really well, and he's got another job for another 2 years or 4 years. And then the pro-life group says, we won, we passed this bill, all of our guys got on board. And then you go, yippee-yahoo, let me send in more donations. Then the lobbyist has a job for another year. And next year, they show up and they play the game all over again, while babies continue to be killed and it remains legal. That's what happens. All right, we've been naming some names tonight. You know, it's really easy for us to say, I hate the government. The government stole my car, the government took my taxes, the government's making me do this, right? We don't like the government. You hear that a lot in grassroots conservative groups. But you know what? Government is a collective term. We can't just point the finger at government, because if it's everybody's problem, it's nobody's problem. If it's everybody's fault, it's nobody's fault. There are individuals in our government with specific jobs that they're supposed to do, with specific authority and ability to change public policy. We have to name names and we have to hold them accountable. It's not always just the government that's doing it to us. There are specific individuals doing it to us. And I want to continue that and name some names for you. Who are these pro-life lobbyists that are running these groups? Tony Launger is one of them here in Oklahoma with Oklahomans for Life. But nationally, these are some that you've heard of. The National Right to Life, Americans United for Life, Students for Life of America, National Pro-Life Alliance, and the Susan B. Anthony list. Now, please understand me. I'm not saying that everything these groups do is bad. Students for Life, for example, I love the way they energize and activate students on campus. They invite them to get involved in ways they never would have before. That's great. But on the other hand, they try and recruit some of those students to go out and campaign and door knock and work for pro-life legislators who aren't really where we are about criminalizing abortion. They might recruit students to go work for somebody like a Paul Rossino. So that's bad. And the Susan B. Anthony list refused to help Dan Fisher and has refused to get involved in any sort of abolitionist effort. They don't understand state sovereignty and how we can go about correcting this. So understand me again. If you are currently supporting these groups or have supported them in the past, I'm also not saying you're a bad person. I'm not judging you. But I'm asking you, maybe you didn't know. Examine them. Take a look and see if what I'm saying is true. And consider redirecting your donations instead here in the state to organizations like mine at Oklahomans United for Life and Free the States and the Ecclesia, who can put those funds to much better use doing what they ought to be doing here in the state of Oklahoma. All right, killing the bills. I think you have a good understanding now of why they're motivated to kill these bills. Let me show you some examples of how they do it so you can watch out for these pitfalls and inform your neighbors and not fall into them anymore. I want you to think of a toddler toy with me. You remember the toddler toy where there's dials and buttons and things going on there where the kid can step up and manipulate them? They stay engaged with it because when the child switches the lever or turns the dial, something happens. There's a response. A light goes off, the door pops open. It's all very exciting. And if you're an Asian kid, you get a really complicated toddler toy like this one. Well, guess what? Our government is sort of like a toddler toy for adults. There's a lot of things on there that you can do, and you might feel like you're manipulating your government, that it's going to respond to you and you're going to be effective. But does anything ever really change? Step up to the government toddler toy and look at some of the things that you can do on there. You might call your senator as something that you can do. You want to step up and do a harder manipulation, you might send an impassioned email. How do you know it's impassioned? It would be in all caps. There would be some exclamation marks, right? Or you might even go down in person and make a personal visit. Let me show you how this works sort of in real life. What happened just a year ago, really, with Senator Silk's bill. We decided that we were going to step up to our government toy and see if we could pull some levers and make something happen. So we step up to the pro tem, Senator Schultz, say, we really need to abolish abortion. Joseph Silk is stepping up. Can you help us support this bill? Can we get this done? You know what he says? He says, well, we've got rules here. We've got a certain way things got to be done. And what I need you to do is go down and talk to Greg Treat, my floor leader. Because, see, he's in charge of scheduling these things, and he can put it on the calendar. So you trot over there, and you go to talk to the floor leader. Can you help us get this thing heard? What's the floor leader going to say? Well, we have rules. We have a certain process, a procedure we need to follow here. We need to get it out of committee. So why don't you go talk to Senator Yin, the chairman of that committee, and see what we can get done. So you go running over to the committee. And what's the chairman going to say? Something along the lines of, man, I'd love to get this out of committee, but, you know, I've sort of polled my members, and I'm not sure we have the votes, and we really need some leadership from the top to make this happen. Maybe you should go back and talk to the leader of this whole thing. You see what's happening here? It's a political game of rock, paper, scissors. I mean, you can email the rock, and you can call the scissors, and you can go visit the rock. But what's going to happen? No matter what you do, you're always going to be covered, cut, or smashed, and you're never going to win. And you know what? They will play this game all day long. They love it. This is just one example of the game they play. But they'll play it all day long. Why is that? Why do they like this? It gives them plausible deniability. They can hide behind things like the rules. Well, we have to follow these procedures. They can blame other members. They can blame the leadership. At the end of the day, they've pointed you in so many different directions, they know that they've been able to avoid blame. And they like it that way. They can protect their jobs that way. So what are we going to do? If we want real change, then we're going to have to change our strategy. We can't fall for the cozy arrangement anymore. We've got to stop directing our time and our talent and our treasure into that cozy arrangement when that's not what we should be doing. Something different. What we've got to do is go about absolutely criminalizing abortion, and that means that we are going to have different expectations of our legislators, and we're going to have to demand more of them and hold them accountable. This is where we start talking about the solution, and that's the next part of our program. Before we go there, I want to show you just very quickly how simple Senator Silk's bill is. In conclusion, the Abolition of Abortion in Oklahoma Act. Our statutes are very schizophrenic. But let me point you to the homicide statute in Title 21. This is how the state of Oklahoma defines homicide. A, homicide is the killing of one human being by another. B, as used in this section, human being includes an unborn child. So already we recognize abortion as homicide in the state. Except wait, there's still Part C of the definition, where it says homicide shall not include a legal abortion. Say, what? What's a legal abortion? Well, to find out what a legal abortion is, you need to go over to Title 63 of the Oklahoma Codes, which Russell alluded to earlier. That's where all of the regulation of medical things are found. And in Title 63, you find over 112 pages of statutes that say who, what, when, where, and why, and how you can legally murder a baby by abortion. Do you know where these statutes came from? They came from pro-life politicians. Years of accumulated pink, puff, and piffle. That's where it came from. So very simply, what Senator Silk is proposing to do is to go into the homicide code and provide us a clean, simple definition of abortion and strike out any and all reference in all Oklahoma statutes to a legal abortion and simply fix it. And it will be up to the governor and the executive branch to enforce that law if we can pass it. And we'll see what happens then. So those are the ends of my remarks. Please come and see me later this evening so we can talk about getting into your church, your homeschool, your community, and train people how to talk about abortion in a winsome way. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Hunter to tell us about the next part of our program.